Today's episode is sponsored by Rev, the productivity powerhouse for content creators, journalists, market researchers, and more. Capture audio from anywhere, get AI-powered summaries and quotes, and leave security worries behind with Rev. Whether you're on the go or in the office, Rev's got you covered. Discover more at rev.com. Hi, I'm Kendall Kelton, and I'm your host today on The Rough Draft. Featuring honest conversations with folks from across the creative industry, The Rough Draft explores the creative process, tools, and resources used by some of the best in the business. From journalists to content creators and business leaders, we shed light on what it looks like to break into the industry, make mistakes, collaborate with others, and the essential tools that help us all along the way. This week, I'm super excited to be talking with Sky Dylan-Robbins, an award-winning nonfiction video producer and filmmaker, not to mention media entrepreneur. Sky has worked for ABC News and The New Yorker. She's also the founder and executive director of the Video Consortium, a global nonprofit media organization that connects and supports today's nonfiction filmmakers and video journalists to tell bold stories that change the world. And on today's episode, we're going to learn more about Sky's path to nonfiction video storytelling and creating a community for other passionate storytellers. All right. Hi, Sky.
Hi, Kendall.
Hi. Welcome to The Rough Draft.
Thanks for having me. Big fan of Rev and all that y'all do.
Yeah. So we're so excited to dive into your career as a nonfiction video storyteller, producer, journalist, all of the things. What initially inspired you to pursue journalism and then later, as I just mentioned, nonfiction video?
So this sounds a little woo-woo to open the.
We love woo-woo.
But I feel like we're all here for a reason, to help each other and help the world in some capacity. And I feel like my method or medium is through visual media, so to speak. And so I've always wanted to be in the media and work in it and use stories to help change people's minds and wake people up, et cetera. So I ended up after college, applying for, an executive assistant role at Tumblr, got it, ended up transitioning per crazy things that happen in the startup world to launch an editorial magazine, so to speak, at Tumblr when it was super hot. Did that with some journalists for a couple of years and ended up transitioning at just the right time to The New Yorker when they were just starting to pursue video, and learned how to do journalism ethics, how to tell great stories from all the great writers there, and went over to NBC and helped start a doc unit over there. And along the way, started VC, and here we are.
And you just mentioned the Video Consortium, which I think you founded in 2015, correct?
Yes.
So I want to talk a bit about why you founded it, if you don't mind digging in.
Sure. At one point, I was the only full video hire at The New Yorker. And there was this whole experimentation thing going on. But there was one point where I was sitting at my desk and I had this internal epiphany. I was like, where are all the other people who are doing what I'm doing? Because there were the amazing writers and all the other people at the magazine, the photo folks and the multimedia folks, but no one was really doing video. And so I ended up sending an email. I think the subject line was the producer circle, and I sent it to some people at Vox and the New York Times and independent people who I knew, 20 people. And I was like, guys, let's talk about the industry and go to a bar and whatever. There was a desire for more community and the idea of pushing things forward collectively. And someone ended up going to LA, starting a chapter, et cetera, et cetera. And it kind of snowballed from there. But the whole ethos of it was the creative process is hard. Let's work together to do it. Innovation happens when people are in community together. And it's evolved from there.
And it's involved to chapters all over the world. And how many members now?
It's a vetted community, and we have about 5,000 members now. Yeah.
So for those who aren't necessarily familiar with VC, which is the acronym for it, do you mind explaining it a bit more? And then also nonfiction video, what that actually means.
The Video Consortium is essentially, we're a global nonprofit, but we're also a global community. And we support and connect video journalists and documentary filmmakers around the world to give them the tools in the community and the connections. Because, this is such a connection heavy industry that we live in, allowing people to get the tools that they need to tell stories that catalyze change and wake people up, so to speak. It's really evolved over these past 10 years with the changing tides of the media industry too. When VC started, I would say the vast majority within our members were staff. Now, the vast majority, I think it's like 70 or 80% are independent. As the industry changes, it's like there's more of a need for a support system than ever. And so we're really trying to fill that gap. Just in terms of nonfiction video, we have been saying nonfiction video because our community and the people, in terms of what they do and what they make, it marries the world of journalism, like hardcore journalism, with documentary filmmaking and everything that comes with that. Plus the idea that, as we all know, like with social media, things are changing. We're experimenting. There's VR, there's like social first stuff. And so we have been using the term nonfiction video to hopefully encapsulate all that video can do that is focused on the truth.
You mentioned everything's kind of flipped from being you're either a full-time staff member or part-time to now being heavily weighted on the freelancer independent side, because as everyone who's read the news, layoffs have happened year over year. I want to kind of talk about like what are those challenges facing video producers and journalists and documentarians today that seem like very top of mind for your group?
Well, I mean, there's so many, right? The whole world is changing with AI and all of that. In my opinion, I think a lot of people will agree that we've gotten really good at making stuff. There's awesome technology that's easy to get your hands on. You can make a beautiful film with a phone. The pieces are there. The biggest issue, it seems, is there's so much content, right? Content, quote unquote. Some people hate that word, but there's so much stuff. And so the big question that a lot of us at VC are asking ourselves is, how do we effectively get these great, important stories out there? Like the distribution models are screwed up. Challenge number one, it's like you make a thing. How do you get your money back? And how do you also get it out there in an effective way? And then, of course, layoffs are happening at big companies, and that is just continuing, and ad revenue is screwed up. I mean, there's so many issues that are happening, but at the same time, what is the term? No mud, no lotus. Like things are changing and we need to figure out a new way. And I'm optimistic that there is a different path forward, but we just need to put our heads together and innovate,
Is there anything that you have seen in the market right now that you're like, that's actually a good idea? Or are there any hopes that you see hopefully in the short term on that point? Or are you like, I don't know, we just got to keep thinking about it?
Yeah. Well, in terms of journalism on a local level, we've all heard that newspapers are dying, news deserts are everywhere, et cetera, et cetera. There is a curiosity amongst a lot of old paradigm, current paradigm models of newspapers that want to figure out new ways of reaching their audiences. We are launching a program that's bringing local newspapers across the country together, and we're going to help them do video better. And that happens in the fall. But the point is, like, there is a desire, and there are interesting case studies of newspapers like telling their stories for a younger audience and reaching people and being able to sell against that. So journalism, there's that. In terms of doc, there have been a few instances of really interesting like self-distribution models that people have been doing. Impact producing is hot right now, but if we can do that more and better and figure out better systems for that, I feel like that has potential too.
Do you mind explaining impact producing? Because I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So like most creative filmmaker people, and I'm part of that category, it's like you're so excited about making a film, you work so hard, and then you export the final thing and you think that you're done. And like, really, that's not the case. It's like half of your work is done. As creative people, filmmakers, journalists, so often we don't think about or just have access to the tools in terms of like business, marketing, what happens after? How do you sell your thing? So impact producing goes back to this idea of like having a really exciting and different kind of and strategic plan for your story. And so impact producing can be everything from like screenings to online penetration.
And I imagine that even brings more of an emphasis on why having a supportive community is so important.
Totally.
Right?
Totally, Kendall. Yeah.
Before we move on, I want to touch on that community and what has been the most special part of the VC these last almost 10 years.
I've seen people benefit from being in community with others within the context of VC are innumerable. It goes from like getting the job of your dreams to someone posting a job, like a gig to crew up for something, and someone getting hired, and then those two people collaborating for years to come, or like a director and a producer meeting at like a local gathering that we had, and then seeing that like 4 years later they're working on their second feature together and it just got bought by like, you know, XYZ platform. Like that stuff happens all the time. I would say that like now we're more connected, but we're also more isolated, and figuring out new ways to help people connect with each other in meaningful ways online is like our next big challenge that we're thinking about. And then as we get bigger as an organization on a global level, doubling down on regional and super local connections and figuring out ways to support people that way too.
So we've talked a lot about nonfiction, video production, the VC. So on our next episode, I actually want to shift gears and talk about, you know, the tools and creative process that you specifically rely on to bring your storytelling to life, and any words of wisdom for folks kind of starting out their career. Well, that's it for today's episode of The Rough Draft. Be sure to rate and subscribe in order to stay up to date with the latest episodes, and visit rev.com/podcasts for even more content. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of The Rough Draft.